Well, it's a great pleasure to welcome Mya Kate to the show. She is Canada's next rising country star. How are you today, Maya? Thank you for joining
I'm
us.
good, thank you. I'm good, thank you.
Yeah. So, first off, tell us about some of the shows that you've done recently.
Well, a couple days ago, I was at Westerner Days, which is similar to like the Calgary Stampede, but in Red Deer.
Hmm.
That was put on by Music Alberta. It was a very good experience. The lady there told me that that was kind of a new thing that they're trying with Westerner Days. Um, so it was cool to be a part of something that is kind of like in the making still. But she said that she's had a really good experience with starting it because it was called the patio. So it was just a whole bunch of different people from Country Music Alberta that like applied to go, and some of them got like a spot, and it was nice to go and play outside of the city, right? Because I get a lot of shows in Calgary, so it was nice to travel outside of the city and go play for a different audience. And it was just a really good experience. So Westerner Days was super fun for sure.
So,
And I was a part of the grandstand show in the Calgary Stampede.
mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell me about the Stampede. I hear that that's a pretty big event.
Yes, in Calgary it definitely is. So I am now saying goodbye to the Young Canadians, but for 3 years I was a member of the Young Canadians as a senior singer. Um, so with that I was in the grandstand show for 3 years. So it was very large commitment. I would spend like 9 hours rehearsing every day from the moment school was over.
Mhm.
I would spend there rehearsing, and but it was totally worth it because I got to perform for 18,000 people for 10 days in a row, which is not something most kids my age get to say.
Oh, wow.
So,
Yeah.
very,
So,
very good experience for sure.
mhm. Yeah. Tell me about the Young Canadians. How did you become to be a part of them?
I actually was a dancer before I was a singer. I was a dancer for many, many years, and I started auditioning for the Young Canadians, and then I became a member of the Youth Singers of Calgary for a couple years, and then auditioned to be a Young Canadian and got in. And um, they're like a token of the of like Calgary. They're like the main part of the grandstand show. When people talk grandstand, they think Young Canadians. Um, so like it was really cool to be a Young Canadian because everyone thought you were cool. To be a young Canadian.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, is there anything in particular you're like wondering about the grandstand show?
Well, mostly the general so far because it's a completely new concept for me. I'm only familiar with the Alberta country music scene only in the peripheral sense. Like I haven't been to
Oh yeah.
the place. I've only interviewed people who have been on this show who are part of the Alberta country music scene. So,
Oh, okay. Yeah, so like I said, the grandstand show was like a really big part of the Calgary Stampede, so it happens every single night. Um, and I think the stands hold 18,000 people, I want to say.
mhm,
Um, and like I think the coolest part about it is like not only my involvement in it, but I get to work alongside other artists. So like this year Johnny Reed was a headliner. So I got to interact with Johnny Reed every single night. And there was also lots of other musicians from around Calgary and Alberta because of the live band that we had. So I know like some of the musicians we had in past years. Um, so I think it's just a really good way of bringing people from all around, even the world, together. We had a roller skating couple from Germany come
mhm.
to be a part of it, and we had Swing Latino, who's from Colombia, an active 24 dancers
Well,
come, and we got to alongside them. So it was the Young Canadians was a really good way of opening lots of doors to different acts in the performance industry, and really good training for sure.
mhm.
But the commitment there was really Lots. It was like 24 hours a week on top of like school and other extracurricular activities I have. So 3 years there was fantastic, but they've kind of given me everything that they can for now. So
Mhm.
I want to focus that time commitment in more of my personal music.
So,
Yeah.
how did you manage to transition from dancing to singing?
It was a tricky thing for sure, but I think I always knew, and like my mom will say too that she always knew that like I belonged on a stage, right? She was like, you belong on a stage, little miss. Um, and I loved being on a stage, but dancing was all I ever knew. And I started, I don't know, just liking singing more and trying singing things more. Um, so the transition was very hard because I went from a competitive dancer who was dancing, I was in 9 different competitive dances to
Mhm.
now saying goodbye to all of it to be a singer. But I think that joining the Youth Singers of Calgary helped with that transition because it's similar to the Young Canadians in a way that I didn't stop dancing completely. It was an introduction to classical music and classical music training and just music training as a vocalist while still keeping the dance integrated into it because it was like we'd sing while we danced.
Mhm.
So it was kind of like an easier transition because it wasn't completely something I didn't know. I still got to keep like a fun, like qualities that I was like able to work with.
I see. Well, yeah, tell me about growing up where you are in Alberta.
It's very cold most of the time. Um, um, I think it can be tricky sometimes because, like, as a younger artist, being only 16, busking is like one of my favorite things to do. I love going to busk, but in the winter, you can't really do that because it's too cold to stand on the street and sing. Um, but I think that also does challenge me to get gigs at other like venues throughout the season because of the weather, because I can't just, limit myself to going and singing outside on the street. I have to push myself to go and find those venues. Um, but I do like yesterday I was out on the street busking just downtown Calgary. It was very, very hot here for Calgary. It's like 38 degrees. So it was nice to just busking is one of my favorite things. Enjoy the weather, the fresh air, and then like meet people. And I'd say like the Calgary scene is a very good music scene. Um, Everyone knows everybody for sure. And I think that's really helped me kind of navigate the music thing. I think that living in Calgary and trying to navigate music and what to do next and how to do it right isn't something most musicians, no one knows what they're doing, right? Everyone's just like taking a gamble and trying to do what they can. So I think that just the music community that we have in Calgary is really helpful and good for that, to lend a helping hand for sure.
So, did you grow up in Calgary or close to?
Yeah, I
Oh,
grew up in Calgary, born and raised in Calgary for sure.
mhm. So that makes you a city girl.
Yes, a city girl, I know, which is like seems backwards for country, but
Mhm. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, how is it like growing up in Calgary and is it and how different is it from say people who grow up from in other parts of Alberta, which are more rural?
Yeah, more cliche country. It's definitely tricky for sure. Especially as a country artist because lots of people are like, "Well, you're a city girl. Like, what do you know about being country?" Um, to which I usually say, "You are correct. I do live in the city." Um, but I do have a touch of ruralness to me. My grandparents live in BC and they own a farm. And I've always loved working on that and being there. which is nice. But I also think that living in the city helps me bring a different touch to my music and the way that I see the genre of country music compared to some people because they're, because they live rurally and I live in the city. Um, so I think that's helpful and it's also good for finding gigs for sure. Um,
Mhm. Yeah. What would be an example of a different city girl perspective that you can bring to the country music table?
what do you mean by that?
Yeah. So how do you see country music differently than, say, people who grow up in the country, so to speak?
Well, I think I have less firsthand experience with like, like the cliche stereotypical country feel, right? A lot of it is talking about the rural life, being on a farm and stuff like that. But throughout country music and the development of it, it also has kind of, it's not always just about that too. So I think, especially cliche, like if you talk to people who don't enjoy country music as much as like people who do like country music, they're like, oh, all country music is the same, cliche, like on my farm, on my tractor, like yeehaw, right? So I think, not like growing up in that lifestyle and growing up in a city, but still enjoying and appreciating the different kinds of country music and how country music isn't just that stereotype. I'm able to bring that viewpoint into country music, um, and kind of break that stereotype that it's not just growing up on a farm, living on a farm, my truck, and like yeehaw, right? Like it is that, but it's not completely that too, right? It's just a genre of music that's beautiful how it is.
Mhm.
So I think living in the city kind of helps me to break those stereotypes a little bit. Because I just have different perspectives coming into it.
Mhm. I do notice that when compared to, say, classical country music, which at the time of its recording and publication was a pretty popular musical genre, as in everybody listened to it, like country folk,
Hmm.
city folks alike listened to it. Uh, Contemporary country music, which has slowly become a niche genre,
Hmm.
has a pervasive anti-city bias built into it,
Hmm.
right? For all their glorification of what they deem to be the country life is a disdain for city life. You may or may not have heard of that recent song as of this recording by Jason Aldean. Was it "Try That in a Small Town," where
Oh
he
yeah,
that big cities are chaotic and messy, and small town life is more comfortable. So I
yeah,
think his songs suddenly become controversial for some
yeah,
reason, but all country songs, in my view, sounds like that these days.
yeah, yeah. And I think that's another thing that I try to, not that I'm trying to like break country music as it is. Like no, country music is perfect as it is. But it's different in so many different ways. And I feel like even just like people who aren't who aren't musicians, they it's hard for them to like see that as much. Um, but I really like the old like the more vintage classical country sounds is what I really like to like work with and play with. Because I like to bring in all elements of country music when I'm composing and writing. Because I think that it's important to appreciate, the deep roots of where country music came from and also how it's transitions and changed till now, right? It's the same way that, like how you were just saying, like there's like the cliche niche, like typical country life, and then how like city life is big and messy, right? So how I like to kind of like break those barriers. Like, yeah, like I do live in a city, but I'm still a country girl and I still get what you're saying. It's the same thing with like, I will put in my most recent release, I was like, I need a steel guitar. I absolutely need a steel guitar because like I like that authentic sound, right? So I was like, I'm not scared to put an electric guitar and with a steel guitar as well, right? So I think kind of going on to that city girl thing, like you were saying before, it helps me kind of integrate and break the barriers a little bit of, the cliches.
Mhm. Yeah. So how did you fall in love with country music as a genre?
I grew up with it, honestly. I Country 105 was just something that was always on the radio, in the car. And it's funny because my dad isn't so much of a country lover, but my mommy is. My mom loves country music through and through, and my dad, he loves his classic 80s rock, but he will love country music for me. That he will do.
Mhm. Yeah,
So yeah.
it takes me a long time to finally, fall in love with country music. Because again, I we grow up in this time when country music meant a lot differently to, the classical country musicians. Yeah, there was a time like in the 60s and 70s where there were like titans of country music were very creative and personal and introspective and even roguish too, especially the men. You got your Johnny Cash and
Mhm.
your Willie
Yeah.
Nelson, but you also have your Patsy Cline and Tammy Wynette, who are
Mhm.
beautiful songwriters who
Yeah,
transcends the boundaries of their own genre.
absolutely.
So you mentioned you are age 16 as of this recording.
16, yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
yeah, happy early or belated birthday to you. So I'm guessing you're still in high school, right, at the moment?
Yes, going into grade 12 as of September.
Yeah, congratulations. Um, how is how's high school to you?
It's good actually. So, I mean, that's another bonus of being in the city is that I actually have lots of good programs offered to me.
Mhm.
So, I go to Central Memorial High School, which is not close to where I live, at all. So, it's not my designated high school, and I actually had to fight like tooth and nail to get in there. But it has a performing and visual arts program. So they have everything from choir, they have musical theater, they have dance programs, they have like visual arts, they have fabrication studies. And then they also have the National Sports Academy. So then like they do like hockey and lacrosse and they have baseball and all the things. So I fought tooth and nail to get into that school because I was like, Mom, if I have to go to high school every day, I want to be able to sing every day. So I was able to get into the program, the vocal program, at my school. So it's every single day, both semesters, last period. Um, I have I have like music class, I have vocal class for an hour and a half. So just like it's like instead of having an option, like instead of taking culinary, I get vocal class. But it's complete like it's really helped. It's more of a classical training. It's more classical training than the more contemporary training that I'm used to. But I really emphasize the importance of classical training, even as like a country artist who doesn't, I don't practice classical vocals on my own, but having those basics, having those building blocks is really important. And just being in that program and just taking that hour and a half every day of having that classical training, or just like working on like sight reading or ear training or composing or any of the above that we do in that hour and a half has really helped me grow as a musician. Um, like I feel like my relative pitch is better, which is like real music mumbo jumbo. But like I think it's just really helped me build my the basics, the building blocks as a musician has really helped me build those up to like be in a good place to just grow from there. So I think that my high school experience has actually been pretty good because not only have I been educated how a teenager needs to be educated, but I've been able to find a way to integrate music and what I love so much into my daily education.
Well, so one of the rare people who I talked to actually likes high school. I myself didn't like it, maybe because there's a difference between what my high school was, which is high school, and what yours was, which perhaps they incorporate a whole range of activities and study pursuits in order to satisfy
Yeah,
each student's needs. But
yeah.
nevertheless, I'm curious about like so I'm not a musician. So I'm curious, what's the difference between a classical music training and I guess the contemporary variety?
Well, I'd say the classical training is just it's more the typical things. So like when I say classical training, I mean more like I could walk into a room with like an opera singer and know what she's talking to about with me. Like I'm able in classical training, I'm able to read sheet music for a vocalist, right? And I can if you give me the key and you uh play me the first note, I can sight read that piece of music. I can read sheet music as a vocalist and be able to sing it out like probably about like 75, 80% right just by the training that I've done through reading, learning like solfege, which is like um it's a way of breaking down uh kind of the key that you're in. So like the notes are like uh that's a very big concept for me to try and explain, so I'm not gonna try and explain it. But um my just my music theory has really improved because of that. And I think that's what I mean by like the classical training is that my fundamentals, my basic like building blocks, um, and my theory knowledge has really improved, which as a contemporary artist is really helpful because I feel like more and more as a contemporary country artist who doesn't, practice classical music, you learn from YouTube, you learn from Ultimate Guitar, you learn from, the vocal coach you hired. You learn from your friend who taught you the riff, right? Which is very helpful things. And I've done those things. Trust me, I have done those things. Um, but I also like to highlight and appreciate the classical training, the knowing the solfege, the knowing the keys, the knowing you know, all the boring music theory. Um, that's the difference between classical to me. And I think that just knowing that, having that music theory and that music knowledge has really helped me grow as a musician.
So yeah, I think it's quite remarkable that you're able to read a given sheet of music. Yeah, that's so cool. So yeah, I definitely think that music itself is kind of a language, and there are people who are good at it and people who aren't, um but it is a language that transcends all languages in that you can speak a different language from my own and still appreciate music, which I find to be
Well, yeah, which is another thing that I really appreciate about the classical training that I get at school is we sing in different languages too. So I get to kind of like what you said that music is a universal language, right? So in that I also get to explore how other cultures experience music. Like I sang a piece in Ukrainian earlier this year, and last year I did one in Arabic, and um, which I think like linguistics is also really important as a musician, as a singer.
Mhm.
Because it's just like anything, right? Like it's like having a good vocabulary, like as an English speaking woman who writes English, prominent music. Just having a good vocabulary helps my writing be more full and more to grab from. And, you know, the bigger vocabulary you have, the easier it is for you to write music. So it's kind of the same thing with like linguistics. If you have an understanding of other languages and things as well, it makes the whole process a little bit easier.
So aside from music, what other subjects are you interested in studying in high school? Which subjects do you like look forward to?
Um, I am an English and social studies nerd when it comes to like the cores. I'm not math and science savvy at all. But if you talk to most musicians, they'll actually tell you that English and social studies is their thing. And I think it's because it's more of like a creative outlet compared to like the math and the sciences. But I also do know a lot of musicians who are definitely way better at math and science than I am. So
Mhm.
I do look forward to English in particular. And I think it's just because of that creative outlet that it gives you, right? there's a lot of essay writing and a lot of, critical analytical responses to texts and personal responses to text and all the boring mumbo jumbo. But at the end of the day, it gives you more of an outlet to be creative and pull from your own feelings, I guess, and perspectives in your schoolwork compared to like the math and the sciences, where it's like it's this or it's the highway, right?
Mhm.
So I think that I just really appreciate that creative outlet. And I also really, even though with PVA, I don't really get like the culinary and like the options. I do get one, and I really enjoy cosmetology. I like doing hair a lot. And my plan for after high school is to do hair and do music.
Mhm.
So I really enjoy that. I've always, growing up in the performance industry, as a dancer too, I need to know how to do hair and I need to know how to do makeup and I need to know how to do all the things. And even as a young Canadian, I've had many people tell me, they're like, Miss Girl, you can always do makeup and hair on the side with your music because you're good at it. And it's something that I enjoy too. So I don't know. I just like, again, being creative. It's being fun. It's being an outlet. So I do enjoy cosmetology. That's something I do like to do.
Mhm. Yeah, I definitely am better at the social sciences and definitely and English than the math and what they call natural sciences. But
Yeah.
nevertheless, I think specialization kind of killed the sciences because it demarcates which one is the real science, i.e., the natural sciences, and which one is the not so real science, i.e., the social sciences, social studies. While I certainly believe that anybody who's, even if they choose to focus on a given field, should have like general knowledge of all of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess our education system has not been so good at doing that, especially
Yeah.
higher education, really, because that's where the special
Well,
education.
and in science, I completely agree with what you're saying with science. Because like I've always been a pretty good, well-rounded student. I'm not unknown for getting honors with distinction, or honor roll. I'm kind of a nerd, a little bit, but that's okay. So science was always something that I was pretty good at, and then I chose to take like bio as a branch, and it just didn't work as well for me.
Mhm.
I think I like having the general understanding of all the things. So yeah, I get what you're saying.
So,
Absolutely.
are you a big reader?
Mm, depends. Can be. Can I? I have ADHD. So for me, it's like if I find a book that I like or an author that I like, I will read. But if it's like not something that I resonate with, it's like, mm-mm.
Mhm.
So for me, I really like Jodi Picoult.
Mhm.
That author is an author that I can read any of her stuff, no problem. Um, and my mom actually introduced me to Jodi Picoult. I'm very similar to my mom in that way. And the one book that I like love and is called Sing You Home, and it's about like a music therapist. And I read it in ninth grade, and I had no idea that music therapy was even a thing. Not a clue. Um, so it was a really, really interesting book, and it had split perspectives. And I really like split perspective books, and I think it's because it's not just kept in one mindset, one perspective, one viewpoint the whole way, right? You get to see other people's perspectives, that change of mentality kind of thing. So I like split perspective books
Mhm. Oh,
and Jody.
that's cool. Yeah. Yeah, I've seen books of Jodi Picoult flying around. What do you call, like, I don't know if you have that in where you are, but the town in Canada where I live, they have these like little free libraries.
Oh
And
yeah, we have the even just around my neighborhood. There's it's not uncommon for it to see, like I've seen it around the city. People just like they're like little mailboxes and they look like little houses and they just like pack them with books and then they like write on them. They're like, this is our like little free community library. Like take one and replace it.
Mhm.
So people just like bring by books and they put in a book and they borrow one. So.
Oh yeah.
Those are always pretty.
Oh yeah. They're wonderful. They're one of the greatest things that could happen in a
You
town.
have them around where you're from too?
Yes, but very few and far between. And since I'm living in Austria, all virtually all of the books are in German, so I
Mm.
read those. Mhm. Yeah. So yeah, one of the things I've learned over the years is that you don't have to finish a book. If you get tired of it, you can just leave. You can just leave it unfinished, or you can just give it to your local little free library and hope that somebody else likes it. And I think
Yeah.
that's the greatest realization that I could ever have because it enables me to just save my time like reading better books. And
And you read more, right? Because you
yeah,
feel less limited.
yeah. And another realization is that I don't have to continuously read a book. As in, so there are so many books to read, right? And so I pick up the habit of reading many books simultaneously, and I learn to just either introduce or remove a and reintroduce a book from the reading cycle, so to speak. So yeah,
Yeah, so there's never like a lull moment.
yeah.
You always have books.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I mean, that's kind of how I think about songwriting too, is like if you talk to most songwriters, they'll tell you like nothing is garbage, right? Like you can write two sentences and be like, yeah, this isn't working out for me, but you save it. So it's like kind of the same thing like what you're saying with reading, that like you don't need to finish it, and like it still means something, right?
Mhm.
So that's kind of how I think about songwriting, is that, just because it's not finished doesn't mean it's not worth it or it wasn't worth the time. I can use it again, or I can come back to it, or I can finish it later, right? And some of the best songs I've written have been ones that took multiple months to write. The
Mhm.
ones that took coming back. Yeah.
So does that mean that you work on multiple songs like simultaneously at the same time?
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes, I mean, there has been cases where it's hard. It's kind of like a writer's block that I'm unable to write anything else because I'm so stuck in the one song. But
Yeah.
then there has been other time, like last year when I started writing Cowboy When You Wanna Be, my recent single that I released. Um, we were doing like a songwriting unit like with PVA at school. And so I was songwriting with a friend and like we wrote a song there too. So I was writing like three or four different songs at the same time. Um, and I was able to finish the one that I was writing with my friend and the one that I was writing on my own. But the one that I was writing with my friend was finished first, right? So I think yeah, I will write songs at the same time, but they won't be finished all at the same time. And sometimes one will take over more of my mind capacity for a while, so the other ones will be put on the back burner.
Mhm.
Um, so I think it's just kind of about inspiration. So like if the inspiration's there and the idea is there, I will never shut it off. And I even have like a notes in my phone for like anytime even if it's even just a phrase, a catchphrase, or a line that I think could work for a song, I just write it down on my phone. And then sometimes if I'm feeling uninspired or inspired and I want to write, I'll just look through that list and see what I got and try and work with something.
Mhm. Yeah, so I'm glad
Yeah.
you brought up the single because here it is. It's Cowboy When You Wanna Be, your debut single released in 30th of June this year. And is represented by a kick-ass album art, cover art, sorry. So yeah, so tell me about the context behind this the cover art.
So it was lots of this release was something that like I did a lot of learning on my own. So with the release, like it was Cowboy When You Wanna Be was like I had written songs before, but it was the first song that I had written like beginning to end, and I was like, I love this song. You know what I mean? Like it was, and other songs in the past, it's like anything. Anything's a work of art. Like it's a work in progress. And I was picking at it and I was like, but Cowboy When You Wanna Be, like I finally finished it and I was like, I think it's done. Like I love it. Like I'm happy with it. So then my mom was like, well then let's record it. She's like, you don't like, and I going into it, I never, and I still don't have any expectations for it, right? It's as many music industry people will tell you is your first release is like your sacrificial lamb, right? So like I don't expect anything from this release, um, other than the fact that I'm just proud of what I did, um, and I want to show the world. I want to be able to release that and have people be able to listen to what I have done. So kind of through it all, it was just kind of learning, like just trying to figure out the things. So I was on a talk show earlier this year on my birthday. I was on the Shop Live and they referred me to my producer. And then we started recording the song and doing all the things and it was ready to go. And then my mom was like, well, now what? And I'm like, well, if we're going to release it, I need album art. And she's like, well, what does that mean? And I was like, well, I need pictures. And she's like, well, like pictures that I take of you on my phone or like, and I was like, I don't know, mom. I don't think like iPhone pictures will cut it. So then we had like the problem was like, I need to find a photographer. So luckily, Calgary, the Calgary community being the Calgary community it is, um, a friend of a friend, does photography. And she was like, yeah, I'd be willing to help you out. Absolutely, for sure. So I just messaged her and I was like, hey, like, I know you don't like this isn't probably something you've done before, but like I know you take pictures and I know you take pictures for my friend and she loves what you do for her. And like, what do you think? She's like, absolutely, of course. So it was just like that. All it takes is a message. And she rented me like a little studio and we went out for the day and it was freezing that day. I remember it was absolutely so cold. But it just had like a couple different studio spaces and we just took a whole bunch of pictures and she edited them up for me. And then when it came down to picking for the album, I was stuck between two, and it kind of just came down to what represented the song more, um, and what I felt was more fitting. So I was just very grateful that um, my photographer was able to capture that for me in the way that I wanted.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I listened to the song. It's really good. I really like it.
Thank you.
You certainly put your classical music training into good use. But a slight question though. How cold and how hot does it get in Calgary? I understand that summer is a very busy time for musicians because that's about the only time where the weather is good.
Yeah. Um, I don't know. Calgary is it's Calgary. That's what we all joke about. It's the city where it can snow in August. Who knows? So like yesterday, like this next week is supposed to be like pretty hot for us. Like yesterday was like 35, something like that. Today is like 30-ish again. Um, so our high is usually around 38, and there's usually like a couple weeks in the summer where it reaches that. But then always throughout that, like if it's a really hot day, you're most likely gonna get a thunderstorm that night.
Wow.
Some rain later. It's not uncommon. And even like with the grandstand show, there would be lots of nights where like I'd go on stage and it'd be like shine, right? Like all sun, no, not a single cloud in the sky. And by halfway through the show, I was being downpoured on.
So,
So it's kind of how it goes. You never know.
oh,
So,
yeah. How do you guys live there?
well, well, when it's hot, it's hot, and when it's cold, it's cold. Always bring one. I think that's just you just always got to have layers with you, I think is the trick.
Yeah, it reminds me of there are like several friends that have in Australia and where
Hmm.
most Australians live on the East Coast, right? Because that's where all the big cities are. And it gets like scorching hot during the summer, which is different from where we are. So they Christmas is summer where they are, and it can be like a scorcher. And as far as I can tell,
Hmm.
it's really dry too. So it's
Hmm.
always
It definitely does get really dry here too. That is for sure. It gets dry here.
mhm. So
It's the worst, like in time when I'm doing like in cosmetology and I have so much like water and product on my hand and when it's so dry, my hands are like, ugh, gross. Definitely gets dry here too. Lotion is also a must. Layers and lotion, that's how we live.
Yeah. So you mentioned you like busking earlier, and so if a day happens to be in good weather, do you go out and do that these days?
Mhm. Yeah. It was trickier when I was little because you have to be 16 in Calgary. You need to, well, you don't have to be 16, but you need to be accompanied by an adult
Uh,
until you're 16. So both my parents work full time. So, and I have two siblings. So in the past, it was a little trickier um for all the things to line up perfectly, right? That my parents weren't busy, my brothers weren't busy, the weather was nice, and we could. But now that I'm older and I drive and I'm 16, so I don't need a accompaniment. Like I don't need my parents with me all the time. It's a little bit easier to go out and get out. Um, but I also just try and plan for it too. That I'm like, oh, the weather's supposed to be nice, and oh, so Clark's got a lacrosse game and Carter has a lacrosse game, but after this, then we can go downtown and then we can sing for a couple hours, and then how about that, right? And my mom's also really good. I call her my momager. She's not my mom; she's my momager. Um, she she's a fantastic woman. She is the best mom I could have ever asked for, and she is also a fantastic manager in the best way she can be. And somehow she makes a perfect marriage of it and is my momager. And it's not always easy, to have the family business thing going. Me and her have gotten some fights before. But I think we're both really good at being able to take a step back and just recognize that, you know, at the end of the day, she's just trying to help me do what I want to do. And I need to realize that she's just trying to help me do what I want to do. Um, so she's really good at helping me push myself, but also not like tire me out. Right. Cause she gets it, right? Like when I was a young Canadian, I was rehearsing 24 hours a week on top of everything else. And then I also had PVA. And then, like I had my own gigs, and then I had busking, and I had like young Canadians, and I had all the things. So then sometimes she'd be like, hey, can you do this? Or do you want to go busking? Or do you want to do this? And I would be like, right. But I knew that she had the best intentions at heart for me. Um, so I really appreciate my momager. She's really good at helping me balance all the things. And also just realize like sometimes she'll be like, hey, do you want to go busking? Do you want to go sing? And I'm like, I don't know, I'm tired. And she's like, well, it's raining tomorrow. And I'm like, okay, then let's go. So I think it's good to have my mom on my side to help me navigate the whole music thing still.
Mhm.
'Cause even at 16, I don't know what's going on, right? Sometimes mom still knows what's best, sometimes, as much as I don't want to admit that.
Yeah, it's I think it's certainly very cool that your parents, especially your mom, gets like so involved in your like musical life, and it's amazing because my I can never get my parents to be interested in anything that I do. Um, and I think it's a feature of like Anglo-Western culture, the English speaking culture where parents are encouraged or are recommended to be more involved in their kids' day-to-day activities. And I think it's very nice.
Yeah.
It creates a bond between the parent and the child. And I don't think
Yeah.
East Asian culture allows for that, which is yeah.
No, I've had lots of people tell me throughout it all that I'm very lucky to have the support system that I do. And I am very lucky and I am very, very grateful because like yes, I joke that my mom's my momager and she keeps me on it and she does. But I think it's also because she, like I said, she's the one who like introduced me to country music, right? Like I grew up listening to country music with my mom. So it's not that my dad isn't there and supportive. It's just he has less of an understanding of country music as a whole. So then to try and help me do the things, he's like, I already don't really understand country music, but he still does what he can in the best way that he can. So he doesn't understand all the music stuff and he doesn't really get me and my mom's crazy all the time. But he still tries. So like Westerner days, my mom was working. He took me to Westerner days, right? And he was having his little dad panic because he's not used to bringing me to gigs. So he's doing all the things. He's like, "What do you need? Do you need me to pack your stuff? Do you need like like all the things. We were there like 3 hours early because he was so nervous. Like it was, so I'm very grateful and very lucky to have the support system and the parents that I do have. It makes the trickiness of navigating the music scene just a little bit easier.
Well, I'm very glad
Sure.
to hear it. So, tell me about the inspiration or the multitude of inspirations that goes into the writing of Cowboy When You Want to Be.
Um, so if you most of the descriptions I have for it is that it's a song that I wrote about teenage boys that disappoint me. And that's kind of pretty much how it is. Uh, like I said, I have two brothers, so it's not that I'm like hating on men. Like, no, I have fantastic male role models in my life. Um, but I think it's, the whole cliche, teenage thing that I was beginning to be introduced to the whole romantic side of the world, right? I was getting to that age where, boys started having crushes on me and were asking me out, and it got to a point where I was indulging in that. But I'm also I'm the kind of person that I don't like when people pretend to be someone that they're not for me.
Mhm.
Um, and so that was kind of the inspiration, is that it wasn't just one, it happened to be two boys that were like, they weren't like right after each other, but it was like both of them. It was like the one, and then some time happened, and then him, and they're both very similar in the way that they knew that I was a country singer, they knew that I was a country girl, and they played to like appease me, right? So they wore their cowboy boots and their cowboy hat with me, and their belt buckle and their jeans, and they drove their truck and they listened to country music when I was in the car. Um, and just pretended to be like that whole cliche, cowboy, right? For me. But then when, it came down to it, when it was broken down, when it wasn't just glitz and glamour anymore, then the rose-colored glasses came off, and so did the cowboy hat. And they were just pretending to be someone that they weren't. And it wasn't something that I appreciated. So I think um Cowboy When You Want to Be, and that inspiration came from the whole idea of kind of poking fun at the idea that I don't appreciate people who pretend to be something that they're not. Um, Kind of saying that I don't I don't need you to pretend to be someone you're not, right? I don't care if you're cowboy. I don't care if you wear your sneakers instead of your cowboy boots. It's how you treat me and how you act and how real and honest you are with me at the end of the day. So that's kind of like Cowboy When You Want to Be, is that like I don't need you to pretend to be a cowboy. You're a cowboy when you want to be to appease me, but I don't need that,
Mhm.
right? I don't need you to be a cowboy when you want to be. I just need you to be you, kind of thing. And that's why that lyric, like, so find me a cowboy, find me a man who's cowboy deep within. So that's not saying that I need a cowboy. Like, no, I'm just saying, like, find me a man who knows who he is deep within, right? I don't need the fake facade. I don't. It's not worth it. Wasting my time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's funny because as a former teenage boy, I can attest that most teenage boys pretend to be somebody they are not. Not just to flirt with girls or and all that, but also to sort of stand out amongst other boys because they don't like to think of themselves as uncool, so to speak. And
Yeah.
so, but then for some reason, because almost all teenage boys like the same thing, so they either look into like a what's a good recent hit movie with the Batman, and then all of them thinks that they are what Robert Pattinson,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
by doing that, they actually becomes like homogenous, like everyone's like pretending to be the same character.
Hmm.
So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for me at least, there was a time when I wanted to be a cowboy, and there was a time where I want to be Burt Reynolds, and
Hmm.
and until I realized I'm not American, so I can neither be either of those. but still, you know, they serve as good male role models for some time.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So that was kind of the whole inspiration behind Cowboy When You Want to Be.
Mhm. So,
Yeah.
yeah, for you, what are some of the role models, musicians or otherwise, that you look up to? Obviously, other than
Uh,
your, I guess.
yeah. So like we talked about earlier, is that like I like that the older vintage classical country style. So like I like Patsy Cline. Um, and I love Dolly and Garth Brooks. I think I like the classic the classic sound. Like I like the steel guitar and I like the fiddle, right? I like those sounds. So I think in a way I the more classical like legends are where my I pull some inspiration from, but also I love Lainey Wilson so much. I got to go see her recently when she was in Calgary with my mom, and that was fantastic. And I think Lainey Wilson is just she's one of those people that as a musician, I appreciate other musicians who they appreciate their fans and they work really hard for what they like for what they want. And I think that's what Lainey has is like she always has a good message, right? All of her songs have a good message behind them. And she stands behind that message. And I just like who she is as a person. And I think as a musician, if I can resonate with the person, it's so easy for me to, appreciate their music. And that's the same reason I love Chris Stapleton.
Mhm.
Um, I love Chris Stapleton. He has a place in my heart. And I got tickets to go see him last year for Christmas, and I sobbed like a baby when I got those tickets. And it was the best concert I've ever been to. And I think it was because I got to see his authenticity as an artist, the amount of times that he would pull himself away from the mic and just listen to the audience just singing and he would just soak in and appreciate that. And as a musician, as an artist, I that's how I want the people who listen to me and support my music to feel. I want them to feel loved and I want them to feel acknowledged and listened to because I know as a fan of other musicians, that's what I appreciate. It makes me want to come back and go to concerts and listen to their songs when I get who they are as a person and I feel like they get me who I am. And there's that relationship even though they have no idea who I am, right? Even I feel like there's a bond. And that's how I want, people who listen to my music to feel too. So I think that's where I pull so much inspiration from is not always just from like the sound of how things are, but just kind of the moral views that they have as artists.
Mhm.
Because I think that having morals that they do help them put out music that moves people.
Oh yeah.
And then with that, he's he's not famous, but he's famous in my mind. My great uncle Patrick, he is a musician, and he has a band called May Contain Alcohol, and him and his bandmates, I love all of them. Art, Randy, Larry, Guy, they're all fantastic. Don, they're all fantastic men. And they help me learn the how to work with a band, right? I started my uncle would put on like Facebook live performances in his garage during COVID because he couldn't play gigs like he was getting to before. So just to, make his fans and his followers remember that they're so important to him, my uncle would still put on little concerts. And I'd go and I'd watch on the driveway and they'd let me sing with them. So I got firsthand experience on how to learn how to interact with other musicians and how to cue a guitarist to have a solo and how to, respond to people taking a solo or needing to know the key of a song, right? To need like be able to walk up there and be like, I need so and so song in this key so I can sing it right. Um, and being able to interact and work alongside other musicians as a vocalist um because yes, I do play guitar, but I'm self-taught guitar. I'm a singer first for sure. Um, so learning how to interact with other musicians was something really important and is a really good basic that you need to know and have. And I'm just so grateful that I had a family member who was able to teach me how to do that in such like a safe space. And he gifted me my first guitar. Um, so he's just I yeah, my great uncle is a huge inspiration for me too because he's I there's the celebrity people that I can pull from, but he's a real life person that is right here that I know that I hold close to my heart that shows me that you can do it. And he like he gave me my first guitar so I could teach myself how to play guitar, and he didn't start playing guitar until he was like in his 30s, right? And that was one of those things that I was like, oh, I didn't start playing guitar now, so like how am I ever going to learn how to play guitar? And he's like, kid, you're 12, like you're fine. You got it, right? So I think just having such a close family helping hand was really beneficial
Well, yeah, I think
and is beneficial.
it's really cool. Yeah, that you can draw role models from your family. I don't remember, I don't recall being too close to any of my uncles. The only the only real person that I was closest with in my family, even today, is my maternal grandmother, and yeah, she's been present in my life for the first 6 or 7 years, and yeah, she's an amazing woman. Yeah, so
Mhm.
in the vein of my last question, uh, who would you like to open for?
Oh my goodness. What I like to open for? So many people. I think I think to open for Chris Stapleton would be, I think if that ever happened, I would have made it in my mind. Um, Absolutely. But I also think um I'd love to open for like an all-female show. So when I went to see Lainey Wilson, Megan Patrick opened for her, and I also love Megan Patrick a lot. And they talked about at the end of the show because they're both very like they're badass women. They're like, screw you. Like, of course, women can show like sell at a show. So at the end, they said like, I don't want to hear anyone ever say that a woman can't sell at a show because we did it. And they did, and I think that I love how they stand for it because they recognize that music that women in country music don't always it's harder for them to do the things as a woman in country music. It's harder for them to sell out arenas, and it's harder for them to sell out shows, and it's harder for them to get shows, um, just because they're a woman in country music. Um, so I think that opening for a show like that would be really cool to just again justify the fact that yeah, women in country music can do it.
Mhm. Yeah,
Um,
that's really nice. Yeah, I have been listening to Megan Patrick for some time now. Yeah, she's really cool.
I like Megan Patrick. I like her as a human being too.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
you touched on a point about women confidently asserting themselves. Is that so? I think if you study psychology, is as difficult for a woman to practice the art of confidence as it is for men to practice the act of compromise or concession. Because
Hmm.
it doesn't come to each gender naturally. So
Yeah.
in some ways, I think that is where men and women can be compatible in that sense, in that men can learn the art of tender care from women, and women can learn the art of
Absolutely.
kind of confident assertion from men. And
Oh yeah.
in some ways, that is what I dislike about the battle of the sexes. Like sometimes
Hmm.
men, there are those men who are so either assertive in their mind, but are weak-willed in front of women, that they end up like being bitter about female kind. And then there are women who have little success in love, and then she becomes bitter at men. That's just not
Yeah.
things should go.
Yeah, well, and like even like Aaron Goodvin. So I met him my first year that I went to Country Music Alberta. Um, so this year, I've gone to Country Music Alberta the last 2 years, and I met Aaron Goodvin my first year, and I was like starstruck. I was like, oh my God, it's Aaron Goodvin, and he was an angel, and he still is, and that man is one of the sweetest human beings I know. Um, and I was so nervous to be there, right? To be in a situation where my first year there, I was like, I was just going to get a feel to, see things out. And at that point, I didn't even have my Instagram for my music set up. Um, I didn't have any social medias for my music set up. I wasn't really doing gigs. I hadn't had any original pieces written. I was still very much so like in the like learning, and still like I am now. Um, but even more learning back then. But I went to Country Music Alberta and I sang at the open mic that they had the first night. And Aaron Goodvin came up to me afterwards and was like, "Kid, I'm not worried about you. You're good. Don't worry about it. You're gonna be okay." And I was like, "Oh my," like starstruck, right? And his mom, both of his parents are so sweet. Um, and Aaron is just he's such a giving human being. And earlier this year he went on tour with Haley Benedict, which was like kind of like what you said, like the battle of the sexes, right? And Aaron is just such a giving man, and Haley is such a hard worker, and it was kind of like perfect marriage for a great show. And I got to go see that too at Blue Jay Sessions here with my mom, and that was a really great show. Um, so yeah, not only do I want to open for Chris Stapleton because that's kind of like the battle of the sexes, what you said, but also Elaine Wilson's and the Megan Patricks.
Mhm. Yes, I've always thought that the measure of a man, it sounds like a very outdated phrase now, but I still believe in it, is not how strong or how skilled he is at things, even though those can be admirable, those can be, commendable, is how he treats, the women and children in his life.
Hmm. Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, so on that note, I would like to conclude with one question that I have posed to every musician who's been on this show. What does music mean to you?
Um, Music is just my life, honestly. Um, Music is a way of life. Uh, I think it's a way to help me get through my day every day. It's a way to help me see the world in the way that I need to see the world to get through my day every day. Um, and without music, I wouldn't be the person that I am. Um, it has helped me through so many ups and downs, and it continues to. And it has helped me find who I am as a person. Um, like I said from the beginning, music has been something that has been a part of my life since I was a wee child and being a dancer. But from being a tiny child, I was able to find the how music was able to make me feel in a way that nothing else could. Right? Even when I was a dancer and I wasn't singing it yet, music could do something to me and make me move in a way and make me feel in a way that nothing else could. Right? No sport could make me feel that way. No book could make me feel that way when I read it. Um, Nothing else made me feel that way except for music. And then learning that I like to sing it and learning that I had a voice in it too. And learning that I can tell my story and get music to move people how it moves me is was when I was like, yes, this is what I need to keep doing. Because if I can bring this joy and this happiness and this kind of love to someone else's life, like music has done for me, that is what I want to do.
Mhm. Well, on that wonderful
Yeah.
note, thank you very much, Maya Kate, for joining this program.
Thank you so much. It was nice meeting you.